Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My guest today is a startup addict. He's currently the VP and Director of E-commerce at San Diego Coffee, Tea and Spice. And he's also a proud father of a new baby and an avid surfer. And we were just talking about how life changes just before the recording started. With sleepless nights and everything, but nevertheless, he's today here. So without further ado, meet Craig Leslie. So welcome to the show, Craig.
Thanks, Nick. I'm happy to be here and appreciate the invite.
Oh, anytime. So you are currently going through something that is commonly not the case for Amazon sellers. So tell us what that is. You've got a few other things that I'm going to bring up because it's pretty unique, but this one is interesting. So tell us what it is that you're going through.
Yeah, it's definitely the biggest project I have undertook on Amazon, and it is switching our entire catalog and multiple brands from Vendor Central to Seller Central.
So you were a vendor to Amazon originally.
Correct.
You decided to become a seller.
Correct. We have been a vendor. I guess it's been longer than 12 years. We've had control of the account because we acquired the company about 12 years ago. And just with the improvements in Seller Central versus Vendor Central, it makes more sense for a brand or brands our size to be on Seller Central. And that's why I made the decision. But it's a huge, huge project.
So, okay, so now we're going to dig into this because this is a big subject. There are a lot of companies who are considering on getting on Amazon and they are thinking, well, why don't we sell to Amazon and they can do the whole work? So first of all, I heard you mention that you acquired the company. So they were already a vendor to Amazon.
Yes, and that was back in 2011, I think, or 2012. So they were very early or early-ish in the Amazon ecosystem. And at that time, Seller Central either didn't exist or it was just getting up and going. It was a completely different platform at the time. So Vendor Central was kind of the main option. That's how Amazon worked during that time. And obviously, anybody who has been around Amazon for that long understands Amazon's transition from really the vendor side to not pushing brands to Seller Central, but certain size brands to Seller Central, just because of the management bandwidth on the Amazon side that it takes for Vendor Central.
Yeah. So just to give a little bit of a perspective, so Amazon. First of all, Amazon changes all the time, so you don't
daily, especially during Prime Month.
Yeah. So also, when you look at it in perspective, like compared to a year ago, operational changes happen daily, but policy changes also are constant. So going way back, Amazon started in mid-90s with books, as you know, and then they made it a marketplace for anybody to sell. But the model was originally in the early days, and we're talking like early 2000s, it was basically reselling stuff. People who could buy, wholesale, they could list the items existed on Amazon and they would simply resell. So that was the model. But you're right about them becoming more of a welcoming, if you like, platform for people to create their own private label products. So that's one. So that's not really. That really is going full speed now because pretty much anybody and everybody who understands the Amazon platform and how to navigate it, how to build a brand, they build a brand just on Amazon, and then they add other channels. The other perspective is Amazon's philosophy in the early days was revenue growth for Wall Street. So they didn't care. They just basically wanted to sell anything and everything at the lowest possible price. And therefore, they would invite any vendor to come in and, sell the products. They would offer, they would say, you do the advertising and we'll give you a PO. Perfect arrangement. Well, actually, that was not so perfect for some anyway. But then things changed because they shifted their focus from revenue growth to profitability. And they purged a bunch of vendors. You know all these things, being a vendor yourself. So a lot of things changed. So now suddenly you have a situation where you have a bunch of vendors who are not necessarily satisfied. And some, they don't even care to be a vendor anymore. They just go become a seller. So now tell us about your decision-making process of going from being a vendor to seller. Why did you decide that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons. I think if I was to boil it down to one word, it'd be control.
Control of what? Control of...
So I think it's control of our brands, really, right? So price control, content control, copy control, graphics. Seller Central makes it so easy if you know the platform. little asterisk there. Makes it so easy to update that content and make it relevant to the customer or keep it updated. Where Vendor Central, yes, you can do it, but it's a little bit clunkier. Review times take a little bit longer, and Amazon ultimately has control. So, and I think the control level on pricing is a big thing too, because if Amazon wants to sell it for a loss, they'll sell it for a loss. If they want to get it out of their warehouse, where Seller Central, obviously we have price control. We can lower the cost if we need to move product, or if we had to, we have the ability to remove orders and bring it back so that it doesn't flood the market as subpar, looking like a subpar product that's selling for really inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned two key things. One is content control, and the other is price control. So to dig into this a little bit more, so content control basically means if you are a seller looking to create a listing, you just go put your information, your title, your bullets, whatever, and then plug in the UPC. And if it doesn't exist on the Amazon platform, it will create a listing. So at that point, this is as a seller, you can go back and make any changes on that listing. If, however, you're picking up a UPC on already Amazon and you create your own listing to resell that item, then you have no such control, because whoever created that listing owns that listing, right? To make the change.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the best things Amazon has done is brand registry, so that the brands can actually have control. We're in a unique situation where we manufacture the brand. We are the brand. We don't provide distribution contracts. So if somebody's reselling our product, they're doing so against the terms and conditions.
Yeah. But the key here is, as a brand owner, if you are a vendor, you don't have that control to go in and make changes, right?
That's
the nuance. So
yeah, exactly.
And that is the nuance that said to you, no, this is not going to work going forward. We want full control. Because I know what it's like. I had a client, they started as a vendor also. And when I came on board, the listings were a mess. They just needed to be redone. And some of them had to be just killed and then recreated. Some could be fixed. And it was forever before Amazon could actually make the change, because you had to ask them nicely, so to speak. And you go in and make the change, and then when you hit submit, nothing happens. Unlike Seller Central, they have to review it, they have to approve it. Of course, you are in the hands of low-level people, and then they probably have some kind of review process. So it just takes forever. So that's the content part. Now, the second thing that you mentioned is the price control, which means that especially if you have distribution through resellers, you can have any one of them selling on Amazon, depending on your agreement, of course. Now, Amazon is also selling, and Amazon will price it down, right?
Right.
So what about MAP policy? How would Amazon adhere to a MAP policy?
The short answer is they don't. They don't care. And it's not, I mean, it's not like we can enforce anything against them. I mean, we could try, but, and we can ask them to change it. But, you know, my feeling is their vendor manager team has gotten so small that they don't care about brands a certain size, and they're not going to respond. They're not going to give you they're not going to give you the time of day, whether it's content, pricing, or just general questions like in an agreement that we sign with them or something like that. But yeah, the short answer is they don't adhere to it.
So fine. So due to content and or I should say lack of content and price control, you decide, okay, that's it. I'm going to become a seller. So now tell us about that experience, because now you got two teams who are rivals, right? You have the Vendor Central team and Seller Central team. I want you to describe the first time you had reached out to them and said, look, guys, I'm not becoming a seller. What happened?
Yeah, well, so on the vendor side, RPOs seem to be automated. We do have a vendor manager, but I don't know who they are. I haven't talked to them in years. And I think their time in a seat at a desk is now like 3 to 6 months, where when we first started with vendor managers, I think it was like 1.5 to 2 years, and then we would get a new vendor manager. So it's a completely different system. So on the vendor side, I really haven't done a whole lot, but then I reached out to Seller Central, and I got lucky because they do have a program for new brands. And although I'm not a new brand on Amazon, I'm a new brand on Seller Central. So I have an account rep in Seller Central that's trying to navigate stuff with me. But that being said, there's a lot of red tape. Like some of our hero ASINs, I'm trying to send inventory in, and Vendor Central has it blocked where I can't send inventory in on Seller Central. So now we're trying to navigate that. Like, how do you get that released?
Why do they put it blocked?
We don't know for sure. They're saying it has to do with packaging reasons, but we've reached out to the packaging team, and we're trying to get it all reset, like the packaging prep instructions reset. But I mean, anybody who's worked with Amazon knows you start here and you have to work your way up. And, you know, we've worked our way up probably halfway through the customer service chain, and we're really getting nowhere. And that's with internal Amazon help.
Okay.
So any suggestions you have, I'm open.
Well, how about killing the listing completely and creating a new one with a different UPC?
We can, but they have the ASIN blocked. They don't have the UPC blocked. So and it's our number one selling ASIN on Vendor Central. So we don't want to kill that because it already has the velocity.
So one of the things that I suggest to my clients who are Vendor Central account owners, I say, look, you don't have to switch from being a vendor to seller. You can split your inventory being your SKUs, and decide, look, these SKUs, we're going to keep it with Amazon and just stay as a vendor. And then these SKUs, we're going to bring it in-house. And then if you have an account manager, of course, that would be a nice conversation to have. Look, you know, we want to continue. Of course, they would welcome that rather than lose the whole account. So that may be something that you could try. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are utilizing the hybrid model right now, because there's 15 ASINs that it's blocked on. So those, I'm doing exactly what you're saying. I'm shipping inventory into Vendor Central. They can control the listing while I navigate and try to get control of the listing. And once that happens, then I'll switch it to Seller Central.
Yeah.
But
so my question to you is, because we struggled with this at the time, when you are a Vendor Central account, the listings are created by Amazon, right? I mean,
not originally. So when we took over the brand, it was all flat file uploads, and we loaded all of our products in there. And then Amazon, I think at the time, it was a long time ago, but at the time, like the vendor manager had the option of what he or she wanted to bring in, and then they put a PO in for those items. But we were so early-ish at the time, as you mentioned earlier, Amazon wanted everything.
Yeah. So, but on the books, on Amazon's books, that listing is owned by Amazon, right? Because they in terms of control. So
currently, yeah.
Yeah. So when you become a seller, what does that transition look like? Because you want to now take control of it. And how do you go about doing that? And what is the process?
I mean, my understanding is brand registry, because so far the listings we've taken over, as long as you have your trademark, your brand registered, Amazon adheres to the brand registry guidelines, and they essentially hand over the listing to us.
And how long does that take usually?
Well, I mean, the trademark process can take years, but
once you get on your brand registry, and then I want this ASIN to be under my control.
It didn't take long for most of the ASINs, but the ones that Amazon has all the red tape around, it's taking a lot longer. And brand registries one of their responses was, this is out of our control because it has to do with some other aspect of the listing. And it's like, well, but I can't get the answer to what that aspect of the listing is or who I need to talk to.
Oh, how about, do you ever have situations where you have duplicate listings? The duplicates were created for the same item?
We have in the past. We've cleaned our catalog a couple times. So if we see that, I normally will either merge ASINs or just kill one of the ASINs. And actually where we saw that was when we went to international to Canada, because of how Amazon duplicated listings. Previously used to duplicate listings to go. But it's relatively cleaned up now. There's still some issues, but. So
one of the things that I found was other sellers would, even though they were resellers, they would create their own UPC.
Yeah.
And then assign it. So did you ever have that kind of situation?
Yeah. We had somebody, I don't know how they were buying our product, but they were creating packs, and they created their own UPCs for them, which in turn created a new ASIN for it. Or they would sit on our ASIN as well. And we went through the brand registry process and were able to get them removed because they didn't have a distribution contract. I don't remember exactly how we did it, because brand registry can be a little interesting to work with because they're really only copyright infringement and trademark infringement. And technically Amazon is an open marketplace where anybody can sell anything. But I think they were using our graphics and they were using our logo, which was, copyright or trademark infringement.
I see. Okay. So the takeaway really is brand registry is key. So if you are a vendor to Amazon, the first thing you have to do is get on Amazon brand registry. And then after that, you can think about transitioning. And after transitioning, be ready for a long process with a lot of headache, right?
Yeah. That's a very good way to summarize it.
Yeah. So as far as there's one more thing It's the natural outcome. But if you're selling to Amazon, you're selling at a wholesale price, right?
Right.
But if you're selling on Seller Central, you're selling at retail price, and then you pay Amazon their commission and the fulfillment fee. So
Right.
some vendors, this is going back a couple of years, they were saying to me that, well, why should I become a seller? Because if I sell at retail, by the time I pay the fees, I've got a very good deal with Amazon. It's not really worth me switching. So what do you say to that? How do they compare selling Amazon wholesale price versus selling at retail and paying the fees? Where do they land?
Yeah. I guess it depends what the business model is. I mean, you're right. We have wholesale pricing and we get paid what we need to get paid through Vendor Central. I think one of the hard things with that is you put in for a price increase on your wholesale price to Amazon, and they're not necessarily going to accept it. So on Seller Central, obviously being able to control pricing, if prices increase or inflation or whatever, we can control that elevation. And to kind of circle back, when we did the analysis of our Vendor Central agreements, the percentage that Amazon takes, as basically co-ops and things like that out of the PO versus Amazon Seller Central fees, it was almost identical with what we would be getting back in our pockets. So for me, and I know that's not always true, it just happened. It was just a coincidence that it was very, very close. But for me to have the control on the content, the pricing, the advertising, all of that, more important than.
Yeah. I mean, control is what everything is about, right? So that's what
right.
Now, the other thing that I know is when Amazon, if you're a vendor to Amazon and you're selling to Amazon, and let's say you have a distribution network, so you have other companies selling your item on Amazon. So Amazon is competing with them. So let's say the buy box is, I don't know, say $45. And Amazon is one of the sellers. They'll go in and then they'll price it right down to like 40 or 39. So, and it makes no sense. They could sell it for 44 and they'll still be in the buy box. At least it keeps the price high enough without really hurting the brand value so much. So I actually took this up with Amazon once. And I said, with one of the high level guys, and I would say, look, guys, what you really can end up with more revenue if you were not so aggressive with the buy box when you are the seller. And you just discount so heavily. It makes no sense. Why do you do that? You know what the answer was?
No, I'm interested to hear.
Website behavior. We have no control over it.
Oh, wow. So it's just their algorithms changing. Wow.
I give you another story. I discovered a loophole, but totally legit. So as a seller, you may be interested. I mean, you won't really use this because you're using FBA, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so you won't really use it. But for those who are using FBM, where you're fulfilling your own orders, you can, you have to go and set up your shipping settings of how much you want to charge per order. And you have different options there for different services. And that applies across the board, right? So whatever the order is, if you chose standard, $5.95, that's what it will charge. Well, there is actually a feed called shipping override. What that allows you to do is submit a shipping charge per SKU, per service. So what happened was I set up my shipping feed and then I linked it up to my shipping system so that I would calculate a moving average for every SKU, how much it's costing us to ship, because some orders are coming from California, some from New York, so shipping all over the place. So I would submit a shipping override fee, and my shipping became not a cost, but actually a little profit center on its own. And then I discovered that somebody else had done that. But you know what they did? They actually did not allow standard shipping. they only allowed expedited shipping. So that lowest tier that everybody uses for the lowest shipping cost, they were not offering. They were offering only expedited. So now what happens is, as you know, buy box calculation algorithm looks at the total. So Amazon algorithm was looking at the item price plus the shipping price. What is the shipping? They were only considering the standard. Standard didn't exist. And this guy was capturing all the buy boxes.
Oh, wow.
And I discovered this.
Yeah, because he only did expedite.
I documented it and with screenshots, everything. And I submitted to Amazon. And I said, look, there is a loophole and this merchant is abusing it. You know what they came back and said? Sorry, we have no control. It's website behavior.
Well, at least they're honest.
Yeah. But you know what? About 2 months later, they fixed it.
Oh, I was going to say, is that still around?
No, it's not. But shipping override feed is still there. You can use it.
Yeah, which that's hugely helpful because obviously your weights and measures of different SKUs are going to be different. So you can't blanket.
Well, I mean, Amazon FBA offers a huge advantage. You have the same shipping cost across the board. So, well, now that they put up their fees, you can compare and see if you can get a better shipping cost. But then you have your fulfillment, customer service, other metrics, and blah, blah. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. So the moral of the story is vendor central to seller central. Definitely seller central is a much better option if you want control over your content and price. But get ready for a rocky transition because it's not as easy. Because you need to take control of the listings, right?
Right, 100%. And, I think setting up a seller central account is much different than moving from vendor to seller. But, yeah. So
let's now talk about operating the seller account. So give us your take on what are the things that you watch, especially if you're transitioning from vendor to seller.
I mean, FBA fees, you have to make sure that the price of your product is going to cover those. But, I think that's one thing that's really nice about Amazon is they're very transparent about these are the fees we're taking. So before you even start selling, where you need to be, or you can adjust your pricing. It's not going to be a surprise. So yeah, I think we look at that. We obviously look at, fees and then advertising. That just to be able to quantify it is a lot easier on the seller central side versus vendor central, because vendor central is kind of a black box. Like the only way you can truly measure it is increases in POs, but you have no idea if it was your marketing that did that or if it's just time of year or what it is. So I think marketing and pricing are probably the two major things we look at.
So what I'm hearing really, if I translate into how I think, is the revenue model. You have to really establish your revenue model in terms of what your costs are associated with every sale, and therefore where your margins will end up so that you can assign your selling price accordingly, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're not making money, you're not going to be around very long.
Yeah. So this is something that most companies don't do as a discipline exercise where they look at their margins. They just say, okay, we want to be the cheapest and we want to make it up on quantity, but that doesn't really work because your costs will also scale with the sales. So your margin is not going to be enough if you're not making enough money. Just yesterday, I had a client and they had never done this. So they submitted their information. I've got a little template and I said, look, populate all the information here. Let's look at where you are. They were actually making $1 loss on every sale.
Wow.
Because they never thought about the FBA, Amazon commission, and let alone the discounts that they were going to offer. So I put a couple of what if scenarios and said, look, if you don't offer any discount, then you are making about $1 loss. Now, let's look at what happens if you just offer a 15% coupon, which everybody does. Well, that goes right down even further. And I said, well, I said, it's cheaper for you not to do any business.
Right.
So
exactly. You're like, thank you for my time.
yeah. So what other than the revenue model? So you mentioned taking control of the listings. What do you do with the listing once you take control?
A lot. I think Amazon's changed drastically. I'd say probably within the last 1.5 to 2 years, with the ability to increase content flows. They now have, I mean, A+ content's been around, but it's a much better platform at this point. You have brand stories. There's more imagery and video capabilities in the carousel. And then obviously you have Amazon stores. So once you have the listing, like, it's important that you're creating the best customer experience, because you only have a finite amount of time for somebody to look at it. So if there's only one image, somebody's gonna be like, oh, I don't trust this product. But if you have the listing fully built out with a lot of great content, the conversion rate will or should increase at least.
Yeah. So that's what I was driving at. You just said the magic word, the conversion rate. So describe what conversion rate is and why it's important.
I mean, essentially it's a sale, right? So if you're the consumer, you go to Amazon and let's say you type in coffee, you're going to get hundreds of listings of coffee, and you probably won't go past the first page. You're going to pick a coffee on there and you might look at 2 or 3, but, traditionally you're going to buy on that first page above the fold, which just means scrolling. And you're going to look at the listing. And if the listing looks nice, you're probably like, okay, I'll try this product. You check out, you make the sale, and that's the conversion. Now, if you come to me and you look at my listing and you click off of my page and you go buy somebody else's, I lose the sale, I lose the conversion.
Okay. So let's break that down. Because it's always the pieces of the puzzle. So first of all, people come to the website and then they do the search. The first thing that comes up is a bunch of listings. So the challenge number 1 is for somebody to actually notice your listing and then click on it. That's called the click-through rate, right?
Correct.
So the first challenge is to differentiate yourself from the other listings, provided that you already show up on that first page already.
That's the key.
It's a whole different challenge on its own. But let's assume that you have accomplished that. That now for those keywords that people are using, you've done your homework, you've optimized your listing, you've done your advertising, and somehow you are ending up on the first page for the search. Now, you need to get the customer or the shopper to click on your listing. How you do that, that's, it's a question on its own. What is it that people are looking at? So obviously they are seeing the price, or in some cases the range, because if there are variations. They are seeing definitely the picture and they are reading the title. So that's what you have to work with. Somehow you have to make them work. There are, of course, ways to make them work. But so the first one is get your click through. Once they click through the listing, now they are on your product page. Now you have a captive shopper, potential shopper, waiting there. Now your page has to speak to them in order for them to say, okay, I'm buying this. And they click add to cart and check out. So that is conversion. So
yeah, I think there's another interesting piece of that is FBA versus FBM, because Amazon has trained their customers to want product in 24 to 48 to 72 hours. Where if you're FBM, while you can get, I think it's Prime Badge certified, it's not easy. So FBA obviously they're all Prime, which Prime conversion rates are much higher than
exactly
the other.
Yeah. So in fact, you have the setting on the left-hand side. You can just switch to Prime and just look at the Prime products. The rest doesn't.
Right.
So,
right.
So conversion rate is key, because what you've done is you have overcome challenge number one to get them to click through your listing. And now you've got them on your page. And if you get them to convert to buy, you've converted the shopper into a buyer. If not, they'll click out and then go buy something else. Now, tell us why that conversion rate is important, other than the fact that obviously you're making the sale, but how does that impact? What else does it impact?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're making money, but it plays into the velocity of the brand, is my understanding. And then, you know, obviously you can do marketing and everything, but the algorithm picks up conversions, and which can actually lead to getting the best seller badge, which then will create more conversions. So I think it just compounds. You know, the more people are checking out with your product in the cart, the better you're going to perform. And really, that's what's going to put you on the first page above the fold. And, you know, if you're not on the first two pages, I know there's some metric out there, but if you're not on the first two pages, you're not going to get found.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. So it's all about the algorithm. So you mentioned something a couple of times, which is really the Amazon's business model. And that is best provide the best customer experience. So I say that you really have to translate that into the things that you ought to be doing, because that is a business model, real business model that gets applied to customer relationships, seller relationships, vendor, everything. So best customer experience from the shopper's standpoint, which is all that matters. Amazon doesn't care about seller or vendor experience.
Right.
So they just want to know that somebody who came to the website, they did a search and they clicked on an item, they liked the item, and they bought it.
Right.
Afterwards, never returned it and left a positive feedback, positive rating, and also a positive rating and a positive feedback for the seller. That is the best customer experience, because it basically tells Amazon that Amazon has done its job to show listings that were good, and the seller did the job of provide a good product, and you can tell that from the reviews. So if somebody... Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's an interesting piece too between vendor and seller on customer experience. If a customer's unhappy on a vendor central purchase, they reach out to Amazon. Amazon opens what's called an and on cord, which is basically asking the wholesaler what's going on with the product, and then we have to answer it, and we never see what ends up happening. Where Seller Central, if you're a customer and you have an issue with our product, you can reach out to us directly. And we have the ability to step in and fix that issue before you leave a review, before you leave feedback. Where Vendor Central, it's a black box, and I don't know who the customers are. I don't have a way to reach them. So I think that's another benefit of Seller Central, is being able to communicate.
Yeah. And also, you know, you are able to, if it's not product, but for sellers, you can actually challenge some of the feedback left, because some feedback is not justified. So,
right. So yeah, that brings up feedback versus reviews versus voice of customer.
Well, I make it even more fun for you. So now, as you know, there was product reviews and seller feedbacks. There's two different things. One is for the seller. The seller could be selling anything. It doesn't have to be on their brand. And they don't do a good job, then they get a feedback, negative feedback or whatever. By the way, most sellers don't pay attention to that. They don't know.
Right. But it's important. It's that little percentage next to your brand name.
It's all part of the buy box situation. So if your seller feedback rating goes really bad, then they won't even put you in the buy box. So now for the products, it's all about the product. And by the way, for those who don't know, if somebody leaves a seller feedback that's negative and it's about the product, you can ask that to be removed, because feedback is supposed to be about sellers. So now,
and I think that's true with fulfillment too, right? As long as you're on FBA, if there's a fulfillment issue, you can get it crossed out.
Basically, anything related to fulfillment for prime sellers, anything related to a product for sellers, anything that contains curse words or anything like that, bad language, you can ask them all to be removed and they will remove it. So that's the advantage, but you have to stay on top of it. You have to know where you are and you have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, I think you only have, 30 or 60 days to ask for feedback to be removed. So you've got to add it to your at least weekly or monthly list of to-dos.
Yeah. So the other thing was the product review. So product review is all about the product. So now recently being like maybe a few months ago, they now added one more thing.
Voice of the customer.
No, that's product rating.
Oh.
So you actually, when you buy a product, you can rate it, but not leave a review.
Oh, right. Give me more on that. Are you able to go in and fight that if it's bad? You are? Okay. I haven't experienced it yet.
You can, because a lot of, people don't like typing. So what happens is when you buy a product, immediately Amazon will send the request to leave a feedback, to leave a product review. And then also you can ask for it from Seller Central. You can ask for it, which is another subject. But as the shopper, when you get that request, you can click the stars and then you're done.
Yeah.
Or optionally, you also have the review. So ideally, of course, you submit both, but most people don't. So what happens is, if you go to your page and you look at your product, it will say 97 ratings, 65 reviews. So
I've got to look at it. I had heard about it, but I have not seen it. So I've got to look into it.
So now what happens is, Amazon has these stores around the country called 4-star stores, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those ratings determine your star. So you have 4.6, up to 5. So that's why I think they decided to separate the reviews from ratings, not to mention it's easier to leave a rating.
Right.
Yeah.
So many different nuances that you have to be aware of.
So my key question to you is, you mentioned how important the conversion rate is. So how do you check the conversion rate and how often do you stay on top of it? And most important, what do you do with it when you check it? What do you do with it? Is this like a sporadic thing or is this a regular thing? And how are you doing it in terms of practical aspect of it?
Yeah, I'm going to want your feedback on how you do it, because, mine is basically looking at sell-through and downloading reports that will show, sessions and conversions and that sort of thing. And normally we don't do it. We probably do it every other month, which might not be enough, but we don't have it. We have a really small team. But that's where I think you really start tweaking your listings. If you see the conversion rates going down, or even if your conversion rates are great, there's always room to improve a listing. And I'm going through that with the transition. Like, our coffee brands need a lot of content work, and that's what we're working on, because I had gotten taken away for another project for a little while. So we're now getting back on that, and hopefully our conversion rates go up.
So I do have an answer for you. So the short answer is, there is no such thing that you can find out there that you can sign up and then it will provide your conversion rate. It's, unfortunately, you have to go to your business reports and then download the file at child's ASIN level. And then now downloading doesn't do anything. You need to now really put it to use. And that's totally up to you what kind of data you're looking at, if you're a data person, or how good you are in looking at data, working with data, together with working with Excel, and then it just becomes an open situation. So those are the mechanics. And I do have a solution that I use I'll share that with you. But that's basically the way to do it. Now, what I always encourage, first of all, that business reports that I mentioned is so critical. There are 3 data points that I look at. That key, and then there's a 4th one. And it all comes from that same file. One is your conversion rates, of course. You want to look at your conversion rates composite across the board, as well as at SKU level and your top 10 SKUs. And you need to be tracking them on daily basis, because you need to know what's going on. I mean, 2 months is better than not doing it. But I mean, let's face it, it's too late already.
Right.
So, and also, most important, you need to be looking at it in perspective. So what was your conversion rate last year, last month, this year, last year, or last month, last year, this month compared to this month? So all these things you need to be looking at. You need to look at trends, because everything follows some kind of a trend. So those are the things. That's one. The second one is your average order value, composite, as well as per listing. You can run promotions based on what that shows. Another one is your traffic. Your traffic. What is your traffic? Again, in perspective, per listing, composite. And the 4th one is your buy box retention. For private label sellers, this is key. Now, most people think this: well, I am the only seller. There's no resellers. There's no nothing. And then, as yet, I get their information. We plug it into our system, and our system, bang, it shows it. Last 2 years of data, 86%, 85%, 79%. Well, how is that possible? Well, those are the numbers. So I tell you how it's possible. Number one, somebody is buying from you and then selling without authorization, and you didn't even know. They bought it, resold it, and they're done. So you need to be able to pick up these things right away. The other thing is, guess what? People buy it and then they return it. If it's Prime, Amazon will take the return, and then Amazon will sell it as Amazon warehouse. So suddenly,
it's interesting. It's interesting we're talking about the buy box. I just had a lengthy conversation with some people about it, and just there's some information on it, but it's like there's so many different aspects that go into it, like the Amazon warehouse thing. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Amazon does that, because as you know, when something is returned, Amazon will give the refund right away. And then what happens to the product? In some cases, they put it in they put it back in your stock so that you can sell it. That's no problem. But in many cases, Amazon will actually refund the customer and pay you for it, because they call it damaged, but they damaged it in the warehouse. So that's another reason. If you happen to run a promotion, you're selling the product somewhere else other than Amazon, and you're running a promotion and your price on that site is lower, Amazon will take you off the buy box.
So yes, I do. I know that. And I'm curious though, if you're the only seller on there, do they just not give you winning the buy box? It's just not attributed to you, even if you make that sale?
You know what they do? You go to the listing, there is no buy box. Your product comes up, but instead of, it doesn't show the price, nothing. And then
it just says buy from this.
No, it just says available from these sellers and a hyperlink. You have to click that. Or on the right-hand side, other options available. And you have to click that. Then it opens a very unattractive small box to show the sellers. And that's where you appear.
Got it. So technically, you're not winning the buy box.
Exactly, because they took away the buy box.
Right. That was what I was trying to explain to somebody the other day. So that was very good. That's helpful for me.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. All right. So I want to also talk about something else before we wrap up, because this is like, I introduce you as a startup addict. You really are an addict, because you got another company, right? So Lono Life, tell us about Lono Life and your experience with it.
Yeah. So Lono Life, we started in 2015, launched on Amazon first in January 2016. And that was actually my first time using Seller Central, which was much different back then than it is now. But that's where I really became educated on Seller Central. We grew the brand to 30 Athens or so, and then in 2021 we ended up selling at the end of the year. So I just exited that. Still consulting with them on Amazon and a little bit on the D2C side. But yeah, I mean, that was a huge learning experience. It's from the inception of a perishable good all the way from growing it from zero to exiting 5 years later.
So what I want to really emphasize here is your experience of that acquisition, because you're still doing things with that company, right? So you
on a daily basis,
and you are still eating it, right? So because for anybody who is doing this is an interesting story. So anybody who's looking to start a company and then sell, this is also another possibility. So tell us a little bit about that, what your arrangement is and how that worked out.
Yeah. I mean, I ran Amazon for 6 years, so I know the brand backwards and forwards. I know the Amazon account backwards and forwards. It's not easy for somebody to come in that doesn't necessarily understand Amazon or doesn't have an Amazon professional that's running the account to take it over. So that's kind of where I'm at with the transition of the company. What is it, June now? So we sold it in October. So what's that, I've been with them 9 months past the time of sale. And I'm on a month-to-month contract, and they can get rid of me whenever they want. But as long as I'm providing value and helping them on Amazon, it could go on forever.
Was it a private equity firm or an individual investor? Who bought it?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. We were looking at private equity, and we looked at some aggregators. And then when we started the company, we had 7 business partners that all kind of had different things, from food science to CEO, CFO, to operations, to brick and mortar sales. And then I was the Amazon piece, along with one other person. As we went through the sale process, did all the due diligence with all these other companies, 2 of the partners decided that they wanted to continue the brand and raise capital to buy the company from everybody. So, it was a friendly buyout. The people that were ready to exited. The 2 people that didn't want to exit stayed on. And then, I'm still good friends with them. I'm running Amazon. So it's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
I think it's also, it's a unique buy, because you're not selling to somebody or to a private equity that doesn't understand the brand. Like, these guys still understand the brand and then live it and breathe it daily. So the brand is still alive and it's thriving, which I think is great.
Well, I mean, look, that's the best formula. You get the most value that way, from your company. And also, it's the perfect example of having your cake and eating it, right? So you sold cashed in, but you still, and at the same time, I will tell you, I actually had a guest. His episode was just published. His name is Greg Elfrink. He's the director of marketing for Empire Flippers. It's the online marketplace of aggregators and sellers. So they kind of matchmake companies who wants to sell with investors. So he was giving me what is common these days, and that if you've done a good job and you demonstrated leadership in building the company, they'll buy it from you anyway. But they'll also keep you as a consultant for a year. So it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I still keep in touch with one of the aggregators, and their model is they can buy 100% of the company and you can walk away, or they're like, we buy 51%, you retain 49, and you stay on and help us run the company and grow it. So I think there's so many options, and I think that those types of options really just came into light within the last couple of years when aggregators really started buying Amazon businesses.
So, I mean, this is great. So we learned all about Amazon. I just want to learn a little bit about you. So give me about your darkest moment doing this business with Amazon as an entrepreneur, as a human being. So what is it that pushed you in that corner, and what was that like?
Oh, like the most stressful point on Amazon?
Whatever qualifies.
Man, I think the most stressful, and if anybody's run into this, I think you would agree, like Amazon has a switch and they can flip it on or off. And we had, I want to say, I might be wrong, but I feel like it was like right at Christmas or right at New Year's, or like around something important where I was trying to take some time off and not work. And they shut down our number one ASIN. And there wasn't really, I mean, if anybody's went through it, they send you something that just says, oh, this ASIN's been shut down. We're investigating it, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what the hell? Like, what am I doing? Like, what happened? So, you spend the next 5-10 hours trying to figure it out on the phone with Amazon. And fortunately, we were able to get it turned back on within, 24 or 48 hours. But I mean, that's probably the lowest point in the roller coaster ride is
how do you put yourself through that and then come out the other end? I mean, what do you do? What are some of the
it's damage control, right? Like you're freaking out, but you have to stay calm. You want to throw your cell phone through the window, but you have to stay calm. You have to talk to Amazon. You have to understand their perspective and be professional and work through it while your body's screaming inside and you have adrenaline pumping and you're just, you're freaking out. Like if that ASIN gets shut down, it's, 70-80% of the sales. And your brand could die. Yeah. Just based on that. But Amazon also, on the flip side of that, Amazon will work with you once you get to the right person. They can help you navigate it and figure out what's truly going on. But that can also be frustrating because anybody who's called Amazon customer service knows you start down here and you need to be up here to fix issues.
Yeah. So you need a lot of inner strength and also a methodical approach to the problem, right? So.
Yeah, entrepreneurship in general is very stressful. It's a roller coaster ride, and Amazon is a piece of that. And, I love Amazon and I'll always sell on Amazon, but Amazon has to switch. Like they can turn you off.
Well, the worst version of a shutdown is having your seller's central account suspended.
Right.
That is, and
like knock on wood. I've never had the entire account suspended. Knock on wood. And I think that's why, you need to play above board. Amazon has terms and conditions for a reason. And if they catch you violating them, they don't think twice.
There are also sellers that do things, just for the purpose of taking you out because they're playing the buy box game. And if you are out of the buy box, I mean, in this case, it doesn't apply to you because you are the only seller. But either way, another brand can get you taken out, which will go to. My favorite story is I actually was in a small group of people with Howard Schultz, the former Starbucks guy. So when he was brought back as the CEO by the board after retiring, everything was terrible. Everything was going down and he had to. So basically he put a training program to go back to the basics and retrain the baristas. So he made the decision for all Starbucks stores to shut down exactly at the same time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, and he was telling the story. you know what happened? Dunkin' Donuts moved in on it just toward the customers to Dunkin' Donuts stores, giving, incentives. Oh, it's closed, but we are here for you. Come to us. So the competition is always waiting, and sometimes they do things. So tell us about a little bit where you live, and we heard about the new baby, and we heard about your surfing, and also give us your contact information, how people can find you, and anything else that's relevant, which will be on our website, but it's good to mention it here.
Yeah, I'm based in San Diego. As Nick said, I just had a baby. She'll be 6 weeks old this week. So navigating fatherhood since it's my first baby, and continuing to run the companies. So I thrive on Amazon and the startup world. So I'll probably be doing many more projects in the future, but anybody who wants to get a hold of me, super easy. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Craig Leslie, and it's just Leslie. And then my email is just craig@craigleslie.com. So I keep it super simple.
Great. Thank you, Craig. This was great, because this is a controversial subject about vendor central versus seller central. You brought a lot of clarity to it. So thank you very much. And with that, another episode comes to an end, and I'll see you next time.
Great.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.